This
for coming.
conference will now be recorded.
We're looking forward to it. We have a great lineup of readers today. Just a reminder for those of you who are not reading at any given moment to make sure that you're muted. And if you also close your camera at that time, then people who select view who's talking or view active cameras will see the primary reader, and it provides a nice focus for everybody. So with that said, we are now recording, and our first reader of the day is going to be Nancy McCabe. So I'm going to hand it over to Nancy.
Thank you. So I'm going to read from an excerpt from my new book, Can This Marriage Be Saved? A Memoir. And this is called The Garden of Earthly Delights. The first time I saw a slide of Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights projected on the screen in art history class, Mark and I had been married for 9 months, and I felt like I was viewing a metaphor for my own life. That painting somehow encapsulated the creepy, trapped feeling I'd had at my first college party, the first time I'd kissed Mark. The painting seemed to capture my unease about the direction my life had taken. I'd known it was a mistake to marry him, but for some reason, I'd walked right into it. The painting's central panel, with its pale, frail, writhing limbs and haunting juxtapositions of eggs and fruit, suggested a moral abandon that transformed, in the right panel, to the torments of hell. There, a man had been crucified in a harp, another shut up in a drum, slashed and confined, as if in the grip of the same crushingly loud music I remembered from the party. Hell was an indecipherable world of shapes that might simultaneously be outer space vegetables or disembodied ears, nebulous images that made no distinction between human and animal. I stared at the broken egg in the middle, or was it a dressed chicken, or a stomach ripped from a body's cavity? I was mesmerized by what seemed to me a rendering of that Halloween party's similar confusion of inanimate, beast, and human, civilization as I thought I knew it, giving way to the savagery of multicolored wigs and gauzy dresses, tails and masks and pointy ears. Why had I, given the desperation I'd felt at that party, ended up married to Mark? I'd been 18 the night I found myself in the front seat of a car, wearing cardboard horns and a red jumpsuit, making out with a bearded man dressed like a nun. I found Mark's costume a little offensive, and I didn't like the way his hands groped me. His kisses were wet and sloppy, and it grossed me out the way he kept sticking his tongue in my ear. I froze and pulled away, but he just followed, hiking up the tongue action. How had I, a girl with a strict religious upbringing who'd recently been in love with a boy who wanted to be a priest, come to this? My mother, who'd grown up a Nazarene, forbidden to dance or go to movies because even ballroom dance could be too sensual, and tickets to G-rated films supported pornography, had hoped I would attend a church college. Maybe someday you'll go to college here, she'd said to me when we visited a cousin's dorm at Mid-American Nazarene College, a school where girls were only allowed to wear pants on the most bitterly cold days. She said the same thing when, on a family vacation, we ascended the prayer tower at Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma. I couldn't imagine applying to either of those colleges. It wasn't even so much that I was uncomfortable with their doctrine. I just couldn't fathom leaving my house with its bug-speckled light covers and the iron fish symbol nailed to the front door that meant Christians live here. I was now a student at the local state university. That's where I'd met Mark, my boss at the campus newspaper. Mark didn't quite know what to make of me, but we were even, since I didn't know what to make of him either. I knew that the outside world was full of frightening, sordid people, drug addicts and hippies in short shorts and halter tops, like those long-haired young people we saw at the Bluegrass Festival in Winfield, Kansas, or the pictures of teenagers in my living Bible. My parents didn't officially disdain dancing, but in the presence of music, they tended to mimic the onset of rigor mortis. Among my aunts, a little toe tapping to music was okay, but they all frowned at the shoulder shimmying, hip rotating abandon of hippie girls. I was not the sort of girl who'd been raised to let guys grab at me in the front seats of their cars. You're so sexy in that costume. Mark pitched his veil and my horns into the back seat. I looked at him skeptically. My hideous double-knit red polyester jumpsuit had been a last-minute purchase from the Goodwill store. I shrank into my bucket seat covered in fake fur, out of reach of Mark's hands and tongue. Out the window, couples in garish makeup and rubber masks came and went from a disintegrating Victorian house with loose porch railings and cracked siding. Inside, it reeked of pot and cigarette smoke. Inside, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin trembled the walls, and people yelled over the music until they were hoarse. When we'd arrived an hour before, smoke already hung fog-like over rooms with crumbling yellow carpet pads, big empty rooms with only a rickety kitchen chair here, a dingy mattress there. It was warm for late October, and the windows were all shut tight, turning the air to a cloudy fishbowl. Music drummed from wall to wall. When people shouted, their mouths moved as soundlessly as goldfish, trolling a bowl for flakes of food. I tried to smile as a guy in a Groucho Marx nose sized me up, his gaze traveling from my knees up to my breasts and then flicking away, seeking out more impressive cleavage. The music died down. Hot, said Luke Skywalker, voice loaded with irony as his eyes raked me. Mark beamed proudly. Bless you, my child, he told Luke Skywalker in falsetto. Hail Mary, full of grace. I stabbed him with my pitchfork. I meant to be playful. My attempt felt strained. A woman in a Playboy bunny outfit and twitched her little round tail as she pranced by, casting me a scornful look. The music blasted again. When had Halloween stopped being about pretend, I wondered as I threaded my way past a cat, a streetwalker, and Audrey Hepburn. When had it become an excuse for girls to wear clingy black things? When someone passed Mark a joint, he pinched it between two fingers and sucked at it, then tried to relay it to me. I shook my head. Mark looked a little abashed at my discomfort. On the second round, he passed, and then whispered, "Let's get out of here." Outside, falling leaves surfed the breeze and rustled against each other as they landed, a constant shivering bustle that made it sound like it was always raining. I'd liked Mark when I first met him, but I hadn't wanted to go out with him. Now, in the car, I felt guilty about this. I smiled a guilty, tentative smile. That's all the encouragement Mark needed to descend on me again, tugging at the zipper down my front. "Don't," I said. "Don't you like me?" Mark asked. Yes. I held his hand so he couldn't unzip me. He looked cheerful, as if he were interpreting this restraining gesture as a sign of affection. "Don't you trust me?" he asked. I wasn't sure, only that I'd been flattered by his attention, even though I wasn't attracted to him, which made me feel guilty, which drove my niceness up a few notches. "Just relax," Mark whispered. "I'm not having sex till I'm married," I replied. My words had the desired effect. His hand inching toward my zipper, stilled in midair, then dropped. "You're such a strange person," he said. For the first time ever, I felt completely comfortable with him. "I know," I said. "That's why you like me." "I think I want to marry you," he joked, still looking hopeful. I laughed uneasily and slipped to my feet, putting distance between us again. Out the window, leaves tap danced, shuffling on the asphalt, then hop-stepping and kicking up in the wind. This street, where just a few hours ago children had trick-or-treated, now was desolate. For a second, marriage seemed weirdly appealing. Not marriage to Mark, just marriage in the abstract, as if it could be a refuge from the scary and unpredictable and unfathomable world. I imagined fleetingly a life where I'd be insulated from smoky rooms and throbbing music and people in masks whose identities I couldn't determine, whose expressions I couldn't read, from drugs and violence and terrifying realities. But I quickly regained my senses, at least temporarily. "I'm never getting married," I said, and at the time, I thought I meant it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. That was great. Up next, we have Jeremy Paden reading from his work.
So before I read from the book that was published this summer, which is this illustrated book, Under the Ocelot Sun, I was going to read from a poem that I wrote this summer as well, and I hope it's a hopeful word in a year that has seemed rather dark. It's based on a true story. In 1966, some young boys in the South Pacific were discovered after having been lost on a desert island for something close to a year and a half or so. It's called Ata 1966. After 8 days adrift in the South Pacific, the 6 boys found themselves marooned on an island. This is not what you think. None was named Piggy. None of them wallowed in that muck and mire that men from cities think to be the state of humans in the wild. They used their spears to fish and not for war. Once they lit their fire, they worked in shifts, 2 by 2 to tend it. They raised a garden, found a way to save the rain. When one fell off a cliff, they clambered down to bring him up, then made a cast of leaves to set his broken leg. Can we not sing them instead? Sing how boys will come together, how they'll work, how they'll make guitars of coconuts and driftwood, and greet the dawn and dusk with song and prayer. So I'll mostly be reading, though I won't finish it. I won't go all the way through this illustrated book called Under the Ocelot Sun. It was published by Shadeland House Modern Press, which is a press here in Kentucky, and it was illustrated by a student of mine who is, or she's no longer, she's an alumna of Transylvania. She's an art student from Panama, and she came, and while at Transylvania, she and I collaborated on a couple of projects. This is a project that she and I collaborated on after her graduation. And I will show, I mean, it is full of her wonderful illustrations, so it'll be a little bit of a reading hour. The story is the story of a mother telling her daughter why they've left Honduras and why they are waiting at the U.S. border. It's in English and Spanish. I won't consistently flip between the two, but I will start with at least one sentence in Spanish. Somos gente de maíz, mija. We are people of the corn, mija. We grind it on metates, soak it in cal, and grind it down to masa for tortillas. In the morning, we drink its milk warmed with cacao, vanilla, and canela. People of the corn make their home in the forest, Abuela would say, where Quetzal and Cotinga sing, near rivers and streams that leap free. At night, the jaguar guards their sleep. When I tell Quetzal and jaguar stories, I tell you things Abuela told me as a child. For you and I, me, we're monkeys, forth and beyond. Abuela came from the mountains, knew me by name, told me the stories I tell you so I would know who I was and not fall in with the glue huffers who lose themselves in fumes after a day of selling oranges, rags, and street corner nothings. Abuela told of when families lived in mountain villages and maíz was grown in milpas with frijoles and tomates. This was before failed crops, late frosts, before floods and drugs that drowned Tegus. Mija, it's not that once there was peace and now there's none. You, me, Abuela, were born in an age of war, born under the ocelot sun. Before the cartels, there were the contras. Before the contras, the football wars and the banana wars and the wars of liberation. But there's beauty too in Tegus. When you were a chichi, artists took over an abandoned state prison, crumbling under the weight of all the violence those walls had witnessed. Jugglers, drummers, and butterflies on stilts partied in the prison quad. You left a handprint in purple and a handprint in yellow. They turned the prints of the children into a field of flowers. But we need to eat, and hope buys no food. Your tío, Misael, who rode La Bestia north for work until they sent him back broken, came with us to the prison party. He was sober. still living. Cousin Carmen and Mar, her daughter, also came and celebrated with us. They helped paint flowers on the wall. This was before the gang stole Mar, before the needle stole Carmen. So many girls, mija, lost, swallowed by the hungry belly of the earth. And hunger, a different hunger, has led us here, a hunger for peace, for justice. Mija, those birds we'd never seen, the quetzal and the scarlet macaw, are a treasure protected by laws, and you are more precious than they. And I will end here, and again, so you can see some of Anelisa Hermosilla's lovely pictures. But thank you very much.
Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing those and the illustrations especially. Our next reader is Gabriel Jason Dean from the Dramatic Writing faculty. Take it away.
Jason, I think I need to be made presenter in order to do my thing here. Can you make me the presenter?
Absolutely. 1 second.
Thanks.
I scroll through our massive list of attendees to find the name.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Hi everyone. It's so lovely to see you all and to hear those words from Nancy and Jeremy. I am going to, as dramatic writing faculty often do, I'm going to cheat and not have to read myself. I am going to let you listen to 2 songs from my new musical, Our New Town, which before the pandemic hit had lots of production scheduled all over the country, but now we're down to 1 at Northwestern University, and that one's probably going to be postponed because of the pandemic as well. Let me tell you a little bit about the musical before we do the songs. This is the show's description. In the aftermath of the deadliest shooting on a college campus in U.S. history, surviving cast members of Thornton Wilder's Our Town put together an unauthorized show as a way to reclaim their theater space and heal their broken community. But when the event is stopped mid-performance, the cast and the audience must decide between compliance or defiance. A hyper-theatrical blend of truth with fiction, of scene with song, Our New Town is an immersive play that puts the audience at the center of an American crisis. So I'm going to present 2 songs to you today. The first one's called Line in the Sand, and it is really the anthem song that the college students sort of. Now, all of this is within the context of the musical. As you're watching it, you start to understand that the songs and everything that you're seeing has been written by college students, has been written by the students that are reclaiming the space. So this is the anthem song that they create as a result of the trauma that they have endured. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to do this.
Columbine in '99. I'm 2 years old at the time. What a way to start my life.
Sandy Hook takes 27. I've just turned 11. Is this what it means to be alive? Virginia Tech, 32 gone. Different day, same old song. This is the life we have known. Oh, Marmot, 17, Rex, my sweet 16, the post black lines in Florida. 10, 1, 2015, I'm the homecoming queen. 9, die in Roseburg, Oregon. Vegas takes 58 more. Different day, same old score, but it can't be the same anymore.
We weep, we pray, light candles and say never, never again. Then we sleep, then we play, fight new battles anyway. It happens again and again. Just background until it's our time. This is our life in love. Say Valentine's just last year. I kiss a boy, say I'm queer. 17, die in Parkland. Music theater camp at State. Singing Hamilton, life is great. 9 black lives in Charleston. Sutherland Springs, 25 gone. Different day, same old song. This is the life we have known. Tree of Life, my hometown, 11 souls gunned down. Pittsburgh feels so hollow.
2012, I'm 10, I take ballet, love Batman, Aurora in Colorado.
Fort Hood takes 14 more. Different day, same old score, but it can't be the same anymore. We weep, we pray, light candles and say never, never again. Then we sleep, then we play, fight new battles anyway. It happens again and again. Just it's our time. This is our light in the. I don't want to give another day. I don't want to name another name. I don't want to live my life in fear. I want to say this ends here. Light candles and say never, never again. Anyway, it happens again and again. Just our time. This is our life in love. Say.
Sorry, don't want to do that one again. I have one more song for you. Thanks for all the comments. It's really, really amazing to watch that as you're listening to it. The other song is, it's a ballad, and it is from the perspective of the mother of the shooter. It's not the mother of the shooter who's singing it, it's the actress portraying her in the show, in context of the show, but this is what they wrote as a result of interviewing her. Here we go.
Na 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 na. The back of a van. He looks at her, she offers her hand. A few weeks later in his daddy's wood shop, the girl tells him softly and his world stops. From that day on, no matter my plans, I carry your life in the palm of my hand. I carry you like love and oneness. I carry you. We got married when I was 19, and for a while he did the right thing. But then he split before you could walk. Not a man, just a boy who felt caught. From that minute on, no matter my plans, I carry you in the palm of my hand. I carry you, lost in aloneness. I carry you. Na 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 na. Just you and me, somehow we made it work. You told me, Mom, one day I'll make my mark. And I believed you, my straight-A kid. Somewhere, though, you disappeared. A child can only hide so much. How was I so out of touch? I should have known you were alone. I could have been stronger, held you for longer. I'm sure there were signs a mother's love can be blind. A boy undone, left alone. I am now on my own, mine to And now I live in the fog of what you did. But all I see is my fair-haired little kid. I want to say you were not my son, but you are mine despite what you have done. And from this moment on, no matter my plans, I'll carry your deed in the palm of my hand. I carry you, rage, cold, and darkness. I carry you. How long must I carry you?
Before I go, that the music was composed by David Davin. He's an incredible musician. He just got nominated for an Emmy recently. He's a Grammy nominee. He's amazing. And I co-wrote the musical with my partner in life and partner in art, Jesse Dean. So thank you for listening.
That was great. Thank you, Gabriel, for sharing that with everybody. Our next reader is Silas House. So Andy, if you want to make sure that Gabriel's no longer the presenter, we'll turn it over to Silas.
Well, Gabriel, that's what an incredible premise. That's hard to follow. I'm going to read the second half of an essay that I wrote for the Southern Foodways Alliance, who commissioned me to write about the South I wanted to live in. It was recently published in Gravy, a magazine of food writing. The essay starts with me as a 6-year-old witnessing the hate crime of a closeted gay teenager named Michael, who was a family friend and later moved to Florida. He later moved to Florida. It's also about my parents' homophobic reaction to the crime and how this shaped my childhood and long coming out process. And so it picks up right here. It's called Crowded Table. Recently, the Highwomen put out a song called Crowded Table. The chorus goes in part, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. My family has always believed in the concept of the crowded table. Throughout my childhood, especially in summertime, we were always getting together to eat at our house, the center of activity in our large family. White half-runners cooked with salt pork and new potatoes, freshly pulled green onions, tomatoes so red and ripe, the sight of them made my mouth water, peeled slices of cucumber, corn on the cob, cabbage fried in a cast iron skillet with lard, salt, a lot of pepper, and cornbread, always cornbread, the queen of every meal. For dessert, blackberry dumplings or banana pudding or cherry cobbler, perhaps a better than church cake, pineapple upside down cake, or pig eating cake. Sometimes there was cold watermelon or cantaloupe, mushmelon in my family's parlance, always raised in my father's garden and heavily salted. Friends attended these feasts as well as family. They were usually folks who did not have much family to speak of, or had been turned away by their own. People like Michael, whose father never stopped taunting him for how sissified he was. To hear my family's pedigree, poor to working class, Appalachian, white, evangelical, all self-identifying hillbillies, some self-identifying rednecks, most staunch Republicans, a lot of people would be surprised to see who gathered at their tables. People of different orientations, gender identities, races, ethnicities, cultures, beliefs, and sensibilities have marveled at the crispness of my aunt's fried chicken, the miraculous density found in my mother's chicken and dumplings, the balance of crunch and softness that distinguish her buttermilk biscuits. But here's the part I have dreaded telling you. While my parents and my aunt always welcomed guests to the table, I am sure they would not have readily set a place for Michael if he had insisted on bringing a boyfriend. They would not have been so keen on pulling out extra chairs for the many people of different religions and cultures who have joined us if those folks had talked too much about worshiping different gods or no gods at all. Any conversation about Black Lives Mattering or a trans grandchild complaining about dead naming would have been shut down immediately. They were always fine with people joining in, so long as these people were quietly different. Throughout my childhood, I witnessed tremendous homophobia from both of my parents. My Aunt Sis, a second mother to me, so open-minded and loving, but was quick to allow casual racism to rear its head in disgusting language. This habit led to the only true arguments she and I ever had. Many of my cousins who have welcomed so many different kinds of people into our family gatherings are vehemently anti-immigrant and proud to openly condemn anyone who protests, whether it be for women's rights or racial equality. The sharpest blade of my life has been this dilemma: how to reconcile the fact that people I love and who claim to love me possess such hatefulness, often defended by Scripture. I still don't have the answer, but I do have hope, and here's why. There is no monolithic Southern family. Mine is the one I know best, and I have witnessed great change occur within us. My parents, who once openly chatted at supper time about rounding up and forcing all gays onto an island, now welcome my husband and me to their table as a couple. They buy us joint Christmas presents, go on vacation with us, and refer to us as a coupled entity, y'all. They support and adore our son, their grandchild, who has transitioned to male over the last couple of years. Sometimes when we are at the lake or dining together in a restaurant, I stop to marvel that we are all out together, my parents laughing and unafraid of how people might see us. Over the past decade, my parents reluctantly began an anguished self-examination. They started to listen. They laid down their pride. This is the way forward for the South, for all of us, to listen, to possess humility, to look at ourselves, and ultimately to change. The future, I imagine, includes everyone who is willing to love, together all at a crowded table. And it includes letting the hate-filled ones know they'll always be welcome, but only if they get themselves sorted. I can go on loving them, but it will be a quiet love because there's a thin line between grace and enabling. I can sit at the table with those whose opinions differ from mine. I will sit at the table with anyone who's willing to be open-hearted, but I will no longer subject myself to filling my plate besides those who actively endanger the lives of others, who vote to take rights away from women and LGBTQ people, who refuse to admit that they too must work to help heal the wound of racism in our country. I can no longer pour glasses of sweet tea for those who believe the environment doesn't matter, that immigrant lives are inferior, who wrongly insist there is already justice for all. Over the past few years, I have had to disrupt too many family gatherings by calling out my cousins or others. When they spout their disgust for difference, I'm considered the bad guy for defending myself and others. They lean into each other, laughing. They tell me I'm too serious, that I'm the one who has allowed politics to divide our family. Once again, I'm just the sissy who thinks too much. Once again, I'm left to simply be thankful that at least my parents have been willing to do the work of self-examination. Earlier this year, I saw Michael for the first time in decades. He had moved to Florida when I was a teenager. A cousin of mine passed away, and he came back home to pay his respects. Not much has changed for him. He never really came out and has never had a public gay relationship. Sometimes a place and a people can do such damage that it can't be repaired. Michael has moved through his entire life afraid that if he isn't quiet about who he is, then he'll be beaten again. Negating and shunning have left their scars too. After the funeral, we went back to a family member's house where a local church had prepared a feast for the mourners. Michael and I piled our plates with ham, fried corn, hash brown casserole, sweet potato casserole, macaroni salad. We sat together at one of the long tables on the porch. I asked if he ever missed home. I never thought I would, he said. I thought I'd never look back, but I have every day, all these years later, and he still wanted to be accepted in the South where he grew up. I do too, but so far, I've only found that acceptance at my parents' table. My mother came to sit with us. She ran her hand down Michael's arm, and there was an apology on her face for all those years ago. Before long, my husband and my father joined us, and we ate together. I believe in forgiveness and giving grace. I do not believe in offering myself up for a beating, whether physical or spiritual. To set a welcoming table in a truly new South, we must actively work to nurture others and aim towards justice together. For everyone who's being oppressed and belittled, we must listen. The South of my dreams is a crowded table of many different colors and accents. Stacked on the table are platters full of the food I grew up with and delicacies I've never known before. My husband and I will be treated like everyone else. My cousins will be there. Their hearts and minds will have opened up to new songs and new dances. Everyone won't think the same way, but they will all bring love first and foremost. That's the table where I want to break cornbread together. Thank you.
Thank you, Silas, for sharing that. Thank you for the witness. And our last reader for this session is Beth Bauman from our Writing for Children and Young Adults faculty. Take it away, Beth.
Hello, everyone. This piece that I'm going to read is untitled, but the short chapters have titles. So the first is, When the Time Comes, age 10. Meet me for a cold one, Pop said into the phone. So Georgie grabbed her parasol and hightailed it to the Rusty Nail. They loved the Rusty Nail, loved the dartboard, the peanut-shelled floor you could crunch over. It was their meeting place. As Georgie hopped up onto the bar stool, Pop slid a bubbly Coke her way and toasted her with his beer. Georgie was small and pale with white blonde hair. She resembled a light bulb. Now you may wonder why she used a parasol, and that's because she wasn't a sun worshiper. Georgie, I have some news for you. I love news. I've been writing my last will and testament, and I'm leaving you a pretty impressive piece of machinery. You are just the one to have it. I didn't know you had an impressive piece of machinery, she shouted. He shushed her. It's all a secret, kid. I'm giving you a heads up. It's not your typewriter, is it? That too is an impressive piece of machinery, but no. Good, because I don't want your typewriter. Georgie, kid, I'm trying to tell you something here. She zipped her lip and waited, but he didn't say anything else. He drew on his beer and blinked his blue eyes. Georgie poked his side with a little tickle, but he was deep in thought. The thing is, Georgie, you have to be nice to the piece of machinery. Pop rubbed his whiskers. I sound like a ninny. What I mean is you have to show reverence. This impressive piece of machinery has a very decent heart, and so do you. I look down the hill nearly every night, and there sits my Georgie on the roof, staring out to sea. You show reverence to the sea by your very presence. It was true. She was on the roof year-round, even in her parka in the winter. I need to know you'll show reverence to what I leave you. I don't even know what it is, for crying out loud. Pop stared at her hard and she piped down. At least tell me some juicy bits. I need some juicy bits to get excited. It's not enough that I choose you, Georgie. When I see you out there on the roof of your house, sitting under the dark sky, I know you believe in things. She felt all tingly in that instant. Crooking a finger, she beckoned him close. Have you seen it too, Pop? Seen what? The Kraken. His smile was too big. You're looking for Krakens, are you? Georgie drew back as if he burned her. This was why she never told a soul about the Kraken. How could you tell anyone, even your Pop, something like that and be believed? I like the Kraken, Pop said, still with a dopey smile. But he meant the fake Kraken, the one on the library mural. She had seen the real thing one night as she sat on the roof looking out to sea. It was maybe a mile offshore. It floated on its back, looking up at the bright moon. It stretched out a tentacle, slow and lazy, and then its huge dark eye found Georgie sitting on the roof. It saw her, the Kraken. Now, Krakens live deep down in the canyons of the sea, and girls live in houses. But there it was, bobbing on the surface, and here she was, perched on the roof. They were out of time and place, Georgie and this Kraken, and she knew then that this was her Kraken. But how did she know it was a Kraken and not a giant squid? Even though it rolled in the gentle surf and stretched out a tentacle like a ballerina, anyone could see what it was capable of. If her house floated on the sea, it could have grabbed it in those mighty arms and shook it so hard to bust out all the windows. The family would be flying off kitchen chairs, brains scrambled, while the Kraken crunched the house like a candy wrapper. But this here was one calm Kraken, a Kraken with a secret, maybe. Pay attention, Georgie, Pop said, snapping his fingers. He leaned in to whisper. My last will and testament will be in the fridge in the vegetable bin. That's my safe deposit box. When the time comes, you're to retrieve it and deliver it to your mother pronto. I don't like this conversation. Looky, I'm planning to stick around for a while. He patted her back. I'm just making some provisions. For when the time comes, exactly. I don't want the time to ever come. Well, it'll come all right, Georgie girl, but there's plenty of time before that. 2 clam chowders, Wally, Pop shouted to the barman. Get the darts, kid. The time comes, 2 years later. Georgie was in math class, working on an equation and chewing her eraser, when she looked up and shouted, Pop? Quiet, Georgie, Mr. Luther said from his desk. Seabright Middle School was on a hill, and below the sea churned and foamed and spit. The wind reached the school windows and gave them a good rattle. A little shiver moved through Georgie as she went back to her equation. Meanwhile, over at the Rusty Nail, Pop sat on the stool reading the newspaper and dribbling clam chowder on the news. which is what happened whenever he ate and read. But this time he put down his spoon as if considering something, as if there was something he wanted to say before he slumped over onto the bar. Last will and testament, retrieved from the vegetable bin in Pop's fridge. My dearests, here are my wishes for my worldly possessions. 1. The house goes to my 2 daughters to do what they will. Sell, I presume. 2. Anything inside said house to my grandkids. You lot can have yourselves a treasure hunt. I've hidden money everywhere, but forget where. Have fun. 3. And the family submarine goes to my granddaughter, Georgie, who is exactly the person to own it. Georgie, you'll find it under the tarp in the garage. With love and regret, but mostly love, Archie Pop Weathers. 12:16 p.m. on a Tuesday, Friday, and a froggy Tuesday at the Rusty Nail, witnessed by Wally the bartender. Unveiling. A submarine, Georgie whispered to herself. A submarine. Pop had a submarine. Did she even want a submarine? Like any sensible girl, she had no idea, but would investigate. She climbed the hill to Pop's place and from the road saw that even the house was sad. It had a lonesome air with its smudgy windows and peeling paint, where before the rundown Victorian had seemed jolly, maybe because Pop was always there, throwing open the front door and glad to see you. Now one of the upstairs windows was opened and a little breeze billowed the curtain like a sad lady with a handkerchief. Oh, Pop. Georgie steeled herself and headed to the garage. That was a tomb of forgotten things. Boxes piled ceiling high, tools everywhere, and everything reeking of mouse and laced in cobweb. There in the corner was something big. Holding her nose, Georgie pulled off the tarp to reveal a snub-nosed submarine, a one-seater with foot pedals maybe 14 feet long with a hatch. It was rusty and dirty. It didn't look seaworthy. Georgie had her doubts. But it was hers, this submarine, and how many kids in the 7th grade could say that? Back home. Ma, can I park it in the driveway? Georgie asked. Absolutely not. But where am I supposed to keep it? Georgie said, perched on the counter and eating a pudding cup. Georgie, why do you want that awful old thing? Pop wanted me to have it. God, Ma, it won't fit in the carport. Her mom sighed. She was always sighing. Georgie theorized this was because she often had a dish rag in her hand. How could you not sigh with a dish rag in your hand? When Georgie looked at old pictures at her mom in a swimsuit and flippers, she saw some glory there, some daring. Now she wiped countertops and yelled at them to take out the trash. Plans. Georgie sat on Pop's worn velvet couch. She called cab companies from his rotary phone. She haggled over prices and needed to find a cab with a hitch for the trailer. She had $18.32 in savings, which wasn't enough. So she rooted under cushions, patted down cupboards, and lifted the head off the door gnome until she found enough fives, ones, quarters, and half dollars to pay the driver. Money technically for her siblings and cousins, but too bad. Pop should have thought about transportation fees. The submarine. Parked on the driveway, the submarine remembers stars. It remembers a lot of things, cold depths and schools of blues shimmering past its window. It remembers the curious stare of a humpback. And now there is a girl, this pale little buzzy person. It liked how she stood on a step stool and opened the hatch and peered inside, eyes big with wonder. It's been so long, too long, since the submarine has had a human nestled inside. The submarine, sleepy from all of the time under the tarp, feels pulled into a bubbly dream. But the driveway is just too interesting. The girl now sits on the roof. A car parked at the curb shoots dirty looks. And there is a rain puddle. The sniff of water excites the submarine. If only it could sit in the puddle. But a puddle is small potatoes. The submarine knows the ocean is coming. It can feel the breath of the ocean in the fog. Thank you.